Welcome to the I'm a Busy Guy show. My name is Vince Locascio and I am a busy guy. I've got another busy guy here, Sean Parnell. He's author of Historic Bars of Chicago. He's written for Esquire Magazine, Time Out Chicago, and About.com. Sean, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you here. This is part two of a two-part series that we were filming, talking to Sean about his book and his website called Chicago Bar Project. If we can start off, why did you write the book?
Well, I wanted to capture, the 100 most historic bars in Chicago that still operate today as a way to have a guidebook for both people who visit our fair city as well as for people who live here to learn more about the places that they think they know. So it's a guidebook for both people to really, take a new look at, the neighborhood bar and some of the other, watering holes that have been around for a while. And
what a book it is. It's not only a guide for places to go, places to find out if they have music, if they have beer gardens, but they tell you about places all the way from the far south side to the north south side, or to the far north side. In the meantime, it tells you about the history of Chicago itself.
Right. Well, we wanted to get a good cross-section of bars all over the city from all different types of neighborhoods, from Park Manor and Beverly to the south, to Jefferson Park, to the northwest, and then everywhere in between. And wanted to, it's written as a guidebook, so there's an entry per bar in the book with trivia and details as well as the write-up. But if you were to read the book from cover to cover, you would get a sense for Chicago history since its early days before there was a city here, and there was Wolf Point and Fort Sheridan, and up until the present day through Prohibition, World War II, post-war decay, and in some of the trends that are going on now. And we also wanted to write about different types of bars in the book, the neighborhood tavern, but also the dive bar, the lounge, the hotel bar, the Irish pub, because each one of those have a place in, the culture and history of Chicago.
Are some of these owners offended when you call them a dive bar?
Nope, they love it, because it's more of like the bohemian side of, going out, cheap beer and, good conversation, cheap jukebox and what have you. So
those are the best bars.
Yeah, some of the best.
I know that you studied, obviously, from the amount of detail in the book, but on the website, but the evolution of the bar. It used to be what? That a bar had beer, a TV, and a jukebox, and that made a bar.
Yeah.
What big things do you see that have changed from that and that are still the same, whether it's a huge bar or a neighborhood bar?
Well, what's interesting about the bar is, that's where everyone would come together. So, the first bar that actually predated the city was the Wolf Tavern, opened up in 1829. The city was incorporated in 1833. And that was actually a place where it wasn't necessarily a bar, it was more like an inn, a tavern, where you would go and, have something to eat and something to drink. You would sleep there. The first trial was held there. It was a center point, for the community. And over time...
Well, tell the story about that, please, though, about the trial.
Well, there was a theft at the Wolf Tavern, and so they called a judge, to find, so the guy was caught, the money was found in his sock, and so they sentenced him, but he wound up running off, before he would serve his time. So that was, it's all been downhill from there, I think, here in Chicago. But, the bar is really a focal point of the community, and that's evolved through the years where, then the neighborhood tavern really kind of evolved as the city grew, and that was a place where, it was primarily for men to go and blow off steam after work, and as a place where if you didn't have a job, you could go talk to the bartender, and he might hook you up with one of the regulars. And as a place where, bars also through the years have wanted to attract, patrons in different ways. So that the first places that have air conditioning were the bars. The first places that have television were the bars.
I think I remember seeing that on their signs.
Yeah.
Air conditioning.
Because that was a draw. They wanted to bring people in, and especially, guys come in without hearing it too much from their wives. And, of course, the wives would call to the bar, if they...
I don't know if it's still there, but there's a bar called He's Not Here.
Right,
so
exactly.
He's not here.
Exactly, and my my dad actually, who grew up in Logan Square, would be sent to the bar around the corner where his dad or his grandfather would go, and his grandma would say, go and get your grandfather. And he tells a story. One time he was pulling on his shirt, Grandpa, you got to come home. I don't want to come home. Leave me alone, kid. So, and some people would literally crawl their way home, down the street. So, and what's interesting these days is because of two things, the bar is becoming more tavern-like. The smoking ban and Mayor Daley's crusade to kind of almost get rid of the bar, to turn them more into restaurants by not allowing tavern licenses to be issued in regentrified areas. You can still get a tavern license, a little bit further out in gentrifying neighborhoods, but
when you say tavern, you mean just alcohol?
Yes. A tavern license is you just serve alcohol, where an on-premise license is or an incidental license is food and drink. So pretty much if you start a bar in most of, the north side of Chicago a little bit, south side too, you have to serve food. So for many years, after this was kind of unofficially, the creed, there was a lot of bad food that came out of, kitchens that, the kitchen is the hardest thing to run in a bar. But over time, the food got better and better, and nowadays is so good that, it draws people really to eat more than to drink in some cases. And because of the smoking ban, it's really family-friendly by day. And the women love it, especially who have longer hair, because then the smoke doesn't get trapped in your hair and, stink the next day. So by day, a lot of bars in Chicago are becoming more tavern-like, where they're family-friendly. I've got a 1.5-year-old boy, Liam, at home, and we'll take him out to, the pub, for lunch. And, by day it's family-friendly and whatnot. By night, it's more, rowdier and,
And he drinks baby stingers.
Well, something like that.
What about how beer has changed? I mean, I get teased because I'm a little older than some of the people I work with, and they tease me about how back in the day you'd walk in and you'd say, 2 beers. So if you did that now, you'd say 2 beers. They tell you, well, they have names now, sir. So.
Right, yeah, what kind?
And what, Goose Island is an example of that, where breweries and...
Yeah, Goose Island, which is one of the bars in the book, of course, a brew pub. So they were one of the first brew pub in the city after a lot of the brew pubs had gone by the wayside, years past. And so they would have a wide variety of their own brewed beers. Nowadays, most bars in the city will have microbrews from all over the country and a lot of local brewers as well, because now Goose Island, Half Acre, Metropolitan. It's not distributed outside the bar. You've got Revolution Brewing, you've got Peace. And so these days bars, people want more than just, Bud and Bud Light, Miller Lite. So, the bars are having a lot more craft brews locally and, from around the world as well. And, those 2 taps, have gone to 8, 12, 24. If you go to Hop Leaf, they're not in the book, but we talk about them on the website. They have, over 40 beers on tap, and each one with a glass from the brewery that beer comes from. And they have a big focus on Belgian beers, but they have over 300 beers in total in bottles from around the world.
Wow.
And so that, of course, that's more of an extreme case. They have the most in Chicago, but a lot of bars, have, a wide variety of beers these days, both on tap and in bottles. So because there's an increased interest in it, more than just, the...
So if I tell that guy 2 beers, he's going to really laugh at me. He's got 300 beers.
You'll get a nasty look.
We're going to go to a public service announcement about the National Italian American Foundation, and we'll be right back with Sean Parnell.
Every single day, my mother was in the kitchen. My father cooked, too. He made a really good sauce. My mother made the best. The meatballs were, like, unbelievable. Forget about it. And all the greens, like the broccoli rabe and the dandelions. And we used to... And she'd cook the zucchinis, and she'd make a beautiful salad out of dandelions and fresh tomatoes. I'm proud to be an Italian-American.
The Italian-American heritage. Live it, love it, celebrate it.
We're fighters, Italians are fighters, and we have passion, and we take great pride in our work. I truly believe that if I weren't Italian and I didn't have my parents, who are the ultimate Italians, as role models, I really don't believe I would ever have reached my goal. I'm an Italian American, and I am so proud of it.
The Italian-American heritage. Live it, love it, celebrate it.
Welcome back. We're talking to Sean Parnell. He's written the book Historic Bars of Chicago. Welcome back.
Thank you.
I know in reading that I believe John Steinbeck traveled, when he traveled around to learn about people, meet people, he would go to churches. Well, I think that you're kind of on the same page where you're meeting different people in different areas. Everybody is when you go to a bar. How did you go about conducting these interviews for your book?
Well, when I go to a new place, especially, I like to just be like an average patron. Just order food and drinks as everybody would, but usually like to ask the waitress or the bartender a little bit about the place. See what they have to say. Sometimes probe a little bit more to see if they've had any interesting clientele or things happen at the bar, more than what you would read on the menu or on the website or something.
So they probably got nervous. Hey, there's some guy asking questions.
Yeah, so we've had some people get a little suspicious, and then tell them, well, I have this website, shybarproject.com, where we write reviews about bars, and then people really open up and tell me all kinds of stories and interesting things that then we write about on the website. A lot of that's found its way into the book as well.
What about there's some things that you hear about all the time, and maybe for the people that don't know. What exactly took place with Prohibition? I mean, hands-on with the bars. They were open, then the government says you got to close, and then they reopened after it was over?
Yeah, so in our long, dark hour of sobriety, all bars were essentially banned, with Prohibition passing. And so, of course, the demand for alcohol did not abate. In fact, because it became more illicit, a little bit more dangerous and whatnot, seemed to actually spike interest in alcohol consumption. And now, at that time, because they had removed, the licensing scheme, pretty much anybody could open up something as long as they, were okay with the risk of getting busted by the cops or the feds. So, many places, though, operated during Prohibition. I mean, they say in New York, there might have been, a couple of thousand bars prior to Prohibition, but during Prohibition there might have been 10,000 because anybody could operate in a closet, in a basement, anywhere. So in Chicago, yeah, exactly. In Chicago, we've got a whole list on our site, all the real former speakeasies. In Chicago, some like the Green Mill operated openly, and would pay off the cops, and occasionally they'd get busted.
In Chicago?
Yeah, yeah, I know it's shocking. But they actually have a trap door, under the bar, so you could get out through a series of tunnels if there was anybody important when the place was really busted. But all the politicians and cops needed a place to drink too.
Yeah.
So maybe these places open, with a certain form of permission.
Why were they called speakeasies?
Well, it's reputed that in Pennsylvania, actually prior to Prohibition, one of the local jurisdictions had increased the tax, to operate a tavern. So a lot of places went out of business because they couldn't afford the tax, and so a lot of people operated illicitly. So because they're operating illicitly and people are having drinks in their place and getting a little loud and rowdy, they'd say, shh, speak easy, quiet down. We don't want to get busted by the cops. We don't want them to know that we're here. Mm-hmm. So hence the term speakeasy came into vogue.
And from your research, people maybe don't think about it, but the social value of a bar. The bartender, as they say, is your doctor, your lawyer, your psychoanalyst.
Yeah. Well, it's a place to talk about politics, sports, what's going on, in the city, and all the things that drive you crazy about, city government, county government, et cetera. So it's a place to really vent, to relax, to get to know people, hang out with, neighbors, friends, et cetera.
Well, you mentioned sports bars, too. I mean, that's gone to an unbelievable limit of 50 screens. And, it used, like I said earlier, it used to be a bar. Every bar was a sports bar. A bar had the TV, the Cubs were on, Sox were on. It's a sports bar.
Yeah.
Now it's just been taken to another elevation. Speaking about bars themselves, quite a few times in the book you talk about a Brunswick bar. What is it, exactly is that?
Well, we know Brunswick for bowling alleys primarily these days and pool tables, but they also were in the bar manufacturing business in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And so there's still a lot of these bars around because a bar closes and then the fixtures and the bars are sold. Salvage companies will buy them, rehab them, sell them to other bars. So any bar that wants to have, kind of an old-fashioned feel, even if it's a relatively new one, they might buy one of these old Brunswick bars. And some of the older places that we talked about in the book have just some beautiful mahogany Brunswick bars, still that's in the condition that, almost the original condition. So Shaller's Pump is like that. Coogan's, they have old bars from that era, so that gives it that really kind of old-fashioned, antique look. And there's actually a company called Ray, W-R-A-Y, that is a company that manufactures, custom builds bars in the old Brunswick tradition. They actually have an old catalog of Brunswick bars, and they'll mix and match different designs. So you see some of the new bars, like Brownstone is one that comes to mind on Lincoln, that have some of these kind of old-timey, type places, which gives it kind of some instant ambiance, if they're going for something like that.
It's more than once that I've heard about it, and I can't name the names of the bars, but I've heard that they'll ship a bar from Ireland, and take the whole bar apart.
That happened a lot in the late 90s, early 2000s. Irish Oak, Johnny O'Hagan's actually almost across the street from each other in Wrigleyville did that. That was kind of the height of the Irish pub boom. Other trends have taken hold since then. But yeah, a lot of bars, to gain authenticity instantly, would actually have kind of knickknacks and actual bars, sent from Ireland or built, from the ground up by Irish carpenters or what have you. Fido's is another one. So gives it that, Irish pub charm when you have one of those, a real bar from over there.
A couple things I want to ask you. One, for people that don't know, and it's listed quite a bit in the back of the book, what is a pub crawl?
Well, a pub crawl is when you go from bar to bar over the course of a night, and if done properly, by the end of it, you should be crawling on the ground. But so I've led some historic pub crawls with the Chicago History Museum and some stuff that we've done since then, through the website and promoting the book, where we'll go to, some different historic bars in the city. We might rent a trolley from Chicago Trolley and go through different neighborhoods, maybe about 4 or 5, bars in a night. Or we might do a neighborhood pub crawl where we really get a sense of the neighborhood and the different places. Of course, we like the old historic ones, but we like some of the newer ones as well that, are notable. So tell the story of the place along the way and then kind of go and explore and have a drink inside.
What a great thing, because it's not only something that somebody's visiting Chicago can see, but a lot of people in Chicago don't know about the real history of the Chicago and the different neighborhoods, and it would be a great way to experience it. Is there, might be a rhetorical question, but what's the busiest day of the year for bars?
Well, St. Patty's Day or New Year is probably one of those two, which is funny. That's usually a time I avoid bars because they get incredibly packed and people from all over.
What do they call the amateurs are out?
Amateur hour, indeed.
Well, we talked about it quite a bit in our first show, but some of the bars I'd like to throw out at you that are in the book. Shaller's Pump.
Yep, longest continuously operated tavern in the city in Bridgeport. Not only is it a great Sox bar, but also, being close to Comiskey, or whatever they're calling it these days. But also is located across from the precinct headquarters.
Kaminsky.
From the Democratic Party. So, 5 mayors, from Chicago have come out of Bridgeport, and, if the walls could talk, they would say quite a lot. The discussions held there.
Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk again to Sean Parnell.
We were forced to get along, we were all poor, living on welfare, and it wasn't about culturally where we were from. It was more about pride in being a stand-up person, having honesty. I am proud of my Italian heritage.
The Italian-American heritage. Live it, love it, celebrate it.
We lived in a very small home surrounded by my aunts and uncles and my paternal grandparents, and it was a terrific experience. My grandparents had gardens all over the house, fig plants, they had grape arbors that you would walk under, a picnic table outside. It was just a wonderful way to grow up. I'm an Italian American, and I am proud of it.
The Italian American heritage. Live it, love it, celebrate it.
Welcome back. We're talking to Sean Parnell, author of Historic Bars of Chicago. Also to mention, I hope I did, is to get more information about his book and about all the things he talks about, chicagobarproject.com. Let me ask you what we were talking about. You had told me about the history of beer gardens in the city and a little bit tied into the German history. What can you tell me? Or tell our viewers.
Right. Well, in 1900, 1 in every 5 Chicagoans was German, and not just German, but from Germany. So you go up to North Center, Lincoln Square, and you had a very large concentration of Germans. So, of course, Germans love their beer, and they love their beer gardens. So it's very common for them to get together, especially in the summer months in Chicago, months. And during World War II, beer gardens were actually banned in Chicago because they didn't want large numbers of Germans congregating because of fears over those sympathetic to Nazi Germany. So the practice was banned up until 1965. So the oldest beer garden in the city is Rezzy's Bierstube, North Center on Irving Park. So they got a really nice beer garden, a couple of big oak trees in the back, and some tables you can eat out there. So that's a great place to go. And then over the years, beer gardens have increased in popularity. So now it seems every bar in Chicago has at least a sidewalk cafe, if not a beer garden, in the rear, where it's a little bit more secluded, fenced in usually. Mm-hmm. And lately, there's been a lot of rooftop beer gardens opening up. A lot are downtown at some of the hotels, but an increasing number even in some of the neighborhoods as well. So, of course, on a nice, summer night like tonight, it's great to just have a beer and, see the skyline and be able to relax in the open air. So I'm a big fan of that personally, and I think a lot of people, especially who come to Chicago, they realize that's just a great way to experience the city.
Well, you mentioned the rooftop. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is the ones at Cubs Park. So how did that evolve? These guys said, well, we're going to capitalize on the view, whereas they didn't before. And
well, the rooftops are on Wrigley. Of course, Wrigley is located in a residential area that's come to be known as Wrigleyville. It's actually Lakeview is where it's located. And so you've got all these 3 flats around the park. And for many years, it would just be the people that lived in those buildings and their friends who would be up on the rooftops, and some sold advertising, like you'd see, Old Style or WGN or Torco. But I think it was in the late 90s, there, people got more of the idea, hey, let's put some bleachers out here, let's maybe sell tickets, and whatnot. So it became a business. So then, of course, that angered, Cubs ownership at the Tribune at the time. And so they threatened to build a fence to block out all the rooftops unless the rooftops cut them in on part of the revenues. So
they are capitalists. I mean, I'm not defending them, but,
Well, and they came to an agreement.
Wanted their cut.
They came to an agreement, and so now, there's revenue sharing, and now it seems like there's probably a couple thousand seats outside of the park.
In one of the bars across the street, I know you talked about it as a kid. You remember going from after the games with Sluggers. Sluggers got the batting cages.
Yeah, the batting cages upstairs. So that was a lot of fun after the games when I was a kid. And now they've got dueling pianos up there as well. And that's one of the classic sports bars in Wrigleyville. I mean, you've got Cubby Bear, Murphy's, and Sluggers is one of the best ones. That's on Clark, just south of the park. So great place to go after the game. And they're one of the first sports bars in town to have a ton of TVs, and as well as music and whatnot. They've got a couple pool tables in there as well. So a classic sports bar.
What about jukeboxes? Because I know you review quite a bit if a place has a good jukebox or
Yeah,
if they
music,
have
of course, is an important part of the atmosphere at any good bar. So some in the book, like Gold Star Bar, has a great indie jukebox. Old Town Ale House,
Meaning independent
music. Yep, alternative music. Old Town Ale House has a great selection of jazz and blues. So places like that, just you can go for, to really stay and enjoy. Of course, you've got drinks, company, and you've got great music playing. So a lot of the bars in the book, really paid attention to the jukebox. Others have live music as well. A place called Mutiny, or formerly the Mutiny Corporation, is a dive bar with a cabaret license on Western. And so they have a lot of garage bands play, and they have garage band music on the jukebox,
Really?
even of previous performances from there. So that's a fun place to go.
Because I always thought that the jukebox was a canvas for anybody to create the atmosphere. You go up and I'm going to pick my favorite song, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you ventured to different areas to see music, like the Checkerboard Lounge is reopened, or it's.
Yeah, the new Checkerboard Lounge, which we write about in the book, is in Hyde Park. It's moved around. It used to be owned by Buddy Guy, but now is under different ownership. And so that's a good blues bar, on the south side, one of the few that's still down there.
Which once again makes your book such a great book, because people, if they want to find out where entertainment is, historic bars, haunted bars. What's the deal about 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock licenses? Do they still grant new ones for 4 o'clock?
They do, yeah, and not many.
Meaning the city.
Yep. So the 2 a.m. license is what most bars have. 2 a.m. every day, 3 a.m. on Saturday. The 4 a.m. license is 4 a.m. every day, 5 a.m. on Saturday. And there's a handful of them around the city. We've got a full listing on Chicago Bar Project. But occasionally, some new ones will pop up. You won't find new ones opening up in Lincoln Park and Lakeview so much, but a little bit further out, you'll find some new ones from time to time. But yeah, when you don't want to go home yet, the 4 a.m. places are the only place to go.
How about Cicero? I don't even know if I asked you that, but does Cicero still have the almost all night licenses?
I'm not sure what's going on in Cicero these days.
Back in the day. Well, I like I said over and over again, the book not only tells about places to go, it tells you about the history of Chicago, and your website is phenomenal. There's tons and tons of information. The Chicago Bar Project.
Hey Vince, there's a guy here that says he's got to see it right now.
Tell him I'll be right there. I'm just going to finish this up.
He gave me a 20.
All right, thanks. Well, once again, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
I got some cannolis for you, like I give all my guests.
All right.
So enjoy those.
Thank you.
Historic Bars of Chicago, chicagobarproject.com.
So, kids under 18.